Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. We do realize this is a late hour, but we did just receive a declination letter, and that's why we're calling this press conference at this time. And hopefully the 2 hours we allotted you was helpful in getting everyone here today. My name is Officer Crystal McCoy, CRYSTALMCCOY. I'm a Public Information Officer with the Aurora Police Department. Today we're here to address an update involving a critical incident that occurred on August 24th, 2019 at 10:32 p.m. on Billings Street and Evergreen Avenue involving Mr. Elijah McClain. Today you will hear from Aurora Police Chief Nick Metz and Aurora Fire Rescue Deputy Chief McInerney, and that is spelled M-C-I-N-E-R-N-Y. Unfortunately, Chief Gray was unable to be here this evening due to being on vacation. First, you will hear a 911 call, and then following that, you will see some body-worn camera footage from 3 responding officers. All of the body-worn camera footage is unedited and available now at our YouTube channel. You have been provided a media packet if you are here today that includes the following: a 17th Judicial District declination letter, the Aurora Police Department Officer Reintegration Program, a joint press release from the Aurora Fire Rescue and Aurora Police Department, Aurora Fire Rescue press release and ketamine protocol, transcript of the 911 call that you will be hearing, an autopsy report for Mr. Elijah McClain, Aurora Police Department Directive 508, less lethal devices, weapons, and techniques. Anyone out there can view that now by going to aurorapolice.com underneath our directives tab. And also you will have the Aurora Police Department carotid control hold versus chokehold comparison presentation. Finally, we have provided the Senate Bill 15219 regarding officer-involved shootings. The body-worn camera footage you're going to view today is approximately 30 minutes long. At the conclusion of the body-worn camera footage, Chief Metz will speak, followed by Deputy Chief McInerney. Viewer discretion is advised in viewing the body-worn camera footage and listening to the 911 footage. And finally, before we begin the body-worn camera footage, we understand that you have a lot of questions. We're here today to answer them, but please hold all of your questions until the very end.
Is that okay? You want the other one off too?
Dan, can you kill your top light?
Sure.
Thank you. Perfect. We're good with the light on us.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
Billings Street and I think it's Black Hawk or something like that. Military equipment.
Okay.
It's Billings Street and Black Hawk.
Okay, is that Black Hawk Way, Black Hawk?
Street.
Okay, give me 1 second. Just repeat that intersection for verification.
Billings Street and Black Hawk.
Okay, are you sure you're not on, give me 1 second. Is it possibly Evergreen?
No, this is Aurora.
Okay, well, no, I understand that. I just don't show you anywhere near a Black Hawk.
It's Black Hawk Street.
Okay, just stay on the line. Give me 1 moment. I don't show you, what I'm saying is I don't show you anywhere near Billings and Black Hawk.
What about Billings Street and Evergreen?
Okay, that's where I show you here. Okay, what's the phone number you're calling from? And your name?
What?
And your last name on? Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
there's a guy, he's actually the opposite of north.
South?
South, yeah, he's walking south on Billing Street, he has a mask on,
Okay.
and then when I pass by him, he puts his hands up and does all these kinds of signs. I know, he's too sketchy, he might be
Okay.
a good person or a bad person.
Yeah.
But he has a mask on.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna put a call in so officers can go see what's going on, okay? Are you still at that location now?
Yeah,
Okay. Alright. When did this happen? When did you see him?
right now, he's like, I just turned around and he's like putting his hands up.
Okay. Don't approach him, okay? If you need to, just drive away. I don't want you to go near him. Were any weapons involved or mentioned?
No,
Okay. I already have a call in, okay? I need to get his full description. What race is he?
I think he's a black male.
Okay. How old does he look? I know he's wearing a mask.
I have no clue.
Okay. What color is the mask or what does it look like?
Right.
Black mask?
He's like a gas station on Billing Street and Fairfax now.
Okay. Is it like a ski mask or what type of mask is it?
Yeah, like a ski mask.
Okay. And then what else is he wearing?
I don't know, he's pretty much like a brown long sleeve shirt,
Okay.
and then black skirt.
Okay. Sweatpants. Okay. Give me one moment. I'm just adding notes. Are you or anyone else in danger right now?
No,
Okay. We have this call in, sir. Don't approach that person and do not disturb anything at the scene. We are going to have officers dispatched to check the area and try and locate him, okay?
okay, he's walking past the gas station on Earth and Fairfax.
Yep, I let them know that, okay? So don't follow him or anything. We're going to have officers come check the area, okay?
Okay.
Just call us back immediately if anything changes or if you have any further information.
Sounds good.
All right, and do you need officers to contact you, sir?
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Call us back immediately if anything changes.
Okay, no.
Thank you.
Computer, stop right there. Hey, stop right there. Stop. 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 I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. Stop. Stop tensing up. Stop tensing up. Stop tensing up. Stop tensing up. Stop tensing up.
No, let go of me.
Stop tensing up.
No, I am an introvert.
Stop
Please respect
tensing
the
up.
boundaries that I am speaking.
Stop tensing up.
Stop.
Relax.
Stop. I'm going home.
Relax or I'm going to have to change this situation. Stop.
Leave me alone.
Stop.
No, leave me alone. First off, you guys started to arrest me, and I was talking where you took permission. Now let go of me. No, let go of me. No, I am an introvert. Please respect the boundaries that I am speaking. Stop. I'm going home.
Relax, I'm going to have to
Leave
change
me
this
alone.
situation.
Leave me alone.
Sir, can you please?
No,
We don't wanna do this,
leave
sir.
me
No,
alone.
we're gonna.
First
we're gonna
off,
talk to
you guys started to arrest me, and I was stopping my music to listen. Now let go of me.
Let's get rid of grass. We're gonna lay you down, okay? Come on.
I intend to take my power back. I intend to be.
Stop running, you're gonna be clean.
I got his arm. Okay, hold on. Like right here. Up here? I lost the stuff. Right here. I don't know. Stop.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do that. I get read correctly.
No, he went for his gun.
Oh, my God. Does anybody have sandy wipes? Alright, thanks.
He can bend his knees a little bit so he can balance himself.
He's kicking around a little bit.
I'm not missing mine. Are you missing yours? Yours is in the car, right? Your cell phone?
What's up?
Your cell phone is in the car?
I think so. Is it an iPhone? No. Yeah, I'm good, bro.
Good, bro.
Can you find sandy wipes for me somewhere, please? From anybody? Yeah, anything, please.
There you go. Mine. It was recording. I just shut it off because it's split in half. So, something fell out right here on the grass, but I don't know what it was.
Gotta throw up, dude?
Yeah.
Throw up right there, okay? Don't throw up on me, though.
We got fire coming, right?
Yeah. I called him normally when he first went out.
And I don't think he went out, dude.
He like halfway, I think, but hey, dude, relax. Oh, okay. Get it out, dude. Thanks, bro. Get it out. No, I'm good.
No, we got called to a suspect. He was out here walking around with a ski mask on. Probably just bring it over by him, dude. And then, we contacted him, he's wearing a ski mask. He started to kind of like walk away from us, so these two wrap him up. And then in the midst of them wrapping him up, pushing him against the wall right here, he reached for Rosie's gun, dude. So. Stand aside. Rosie rolling this way, dude?
Yeah.
Are you able to?
Legs locking up.
There you go. Just like that.
You're good.
Don't get up, dude. It's not going to be good for you. I'm telling you right now.
If you keep messing around, I'm bringing my dog out into a dog bite. You understand me? Keep messing around.
I think we're okay for here, I appreciate it.
Watch your step, dude. Right as puke. Don't do it, dude.
Relax, bro. Come
Chill
on.
out.
We lost this one. Just relax.
No. When we tried to stop him, dude.
Come on.
Speak English.
Okay.
Stop, dude.
Well, chill out. You've already been told several times to stop.
I can't sense myself.
Ow.
Stop. Dude, chill out.
Nothing really criminal. My officers go to make contact with him. He starts acting crazy. They attack him. Glad he ended up trying to put a blinded on the guy. And actually,
Well, stop fighting us.
Stop fighting the blind on him. Put him out. They were able to get him handcuffs. We're still struggling with the fire on scene. And that's where we're at. I just want to let you know we did that. We did that. We did that tonight. So. And the other one, I don't. Oh, you got him? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I knew he was busy. And just one other thing, we did have an officer get.
Yeah, that's all his dude. That's what he was wearing.
It was used. Okay. It was very minor. So the ambulance gets you everything like all the cops are okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
Let's give that a couple of minutes and we'll put him out.
Whatever he's on, he has incredible strength.
Yeah, crazy strength.
I had him in a bar hammer behind his back, and his arm was above his head. He was just like, oh.
Is there anybody that can relieve me for a second? Smith! Oh, we need somebody just to. Can I just get on for a second so I can get up? I'm like cramping up. Okay. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. So he's walking away from us, and he did this thing like, hey dude, this is not a big deal, just relax. And we sat there for a good 30 seconds to try to calm down. Like, dude, hey, not a big deal. We need to talk to you. And then he kept doing this, and he kept saying things that didn't make any sense. And then I'm like, hey, bring him over the grass. If we got to take him down, we can take him down the grass, not like too right here by the rocks. And then he starts moving crazier, so we get him cornered against the wall.
What's he doing exactly?
He's like saying stuff, and he's holding his arms in, and he's like, I don't remember exactly what he's saying right now, but just acting really just trying to.
Randy, you need a relief, buddy? Randy, you need a relief? No, I'm good. I'm just going to pat him down.
And then over there, Brody tells me to try to grab my gun. So we pull him down.
While he's playing.
Yeah, so he pulls his arm free and comes out, and I don't remember feeling it because I was focused on him. But he said, try to grab your gun. So I'm like, okay, so he comes down, and yeah, go from there. And I don't know what it is.
No, we just thought it was weird when you were
Well, it is.
So,
Okay.
that's all.
I need, yeah, we should talk to you that part.
But so I initially tried, and then I was in a bad position. I didn't want to hurt his neck, so I had to release because I was behind. It wasn't like.
So you went to put it on?
So it was like almost like a schoolboy trying to get caught backwards. I think that was the only position I had. Just relax, dude. And
So
then
we can breathe. Look inside. You can breathe. Okay. All right.
I just had his arm.
I understand. I understand. Don't move your feet. Don't do that. So if you take this
Good one.
But he's definitely on something.
Stop messing around,
Well,
man.
chill out.
Well, we'll just leave him.
You've already been told several times to stop.
I can't fix myself.
We'll just leave him there until the ambulance gets here, we'll just put him down to you.
Yeah, I know you're busy, but I need to let you know that.
Stop.
We had a suspicious call over here on Blue.
Chill out.
Got a mask in his face, that kind of weird. Nothing really criminal. My officers go to get contact with him. He starts acting crazy. They attack him. Rosenblatt, he ended up trying to put a carotid on the guy. And actually,
Well, stop fighting us.
Stop fighting the carotid on him. They put him out. They were able to get him handcuffs. We're still struggling with him on a fire on scene. And that's where we're at. I just wanted to show us, yeah, we did have to utilize right? So. And the other one, I don't. Oh, you got him? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I knew busy. Just one other thing.
Is this his?
Yeah, that's all his. That's what he was wearing.
It was used. Okay. It was very minor.
When the ambulance gets here, we're gonna go ahead and.
All the cops are okay.
Perfect.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
I'll give that a read.
Whenever he's
Okay,
on,
all right.
he has incredible strength. I had him in a bar hammer behind his back, and his arm was above his head. He was so like,
Everybody that can leave me for a second?
Yeah.
Space!
Yeah, well, yeah, if he keeps on, we'll do that.
all right? I'm trying to keep him on his side, he keeps fighting us. Stop, dude, don't do it. We haven't even got that far yet, man. My knee's on his elbow, dude. He ain't going anywhere. No, I'm good. I'm just going to pat him down, make sure he doesn't have anything, because we haven't got to that far yet. Don't do it.
You're good.
Nothing on his legs, right?
No.
I'm gonna come back this way. No, we're not.
Yeah.
Really is. No, right in his puke.
Oh, thank you.
Here, come this way with it. Come this way. There we go.
Where are you trying to get?
Just put his arm down here. I can drop my knee right in his tricep. And he can't move. He can breathe. He can breathe. I just have his arm pinned behind his back. That's it.
Don't move your feet. Don't do that.
So if you take his foot, angle it outwards, and put pressure on his ankle. He almost did a push-up with all three of us on his back.
Yeah, so once he gets signed, I'm gonna hit him in the right shoulder.
You want shoulder or ass? Ass is right here, man.
We'll give that a couple of minutes, we'll see if that works, but if it does.
Yeah.
You good?
Good. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're good. We're good.
Drag your knuckles right there. You'll put pressure until it moves. All right?
You got 5 fingers, you can move.
Rub it right in his ear if he fights, all right?
We'll give that a minute or two, see if that works, and once it is, we'll go ahead, if you guys are okay with it, we'll uncuff him, we'll go up with the right arm, down with the left, and we'll just straighten everything. We'll give that a minute or two.
All right. Hey, would you, Rosie, here in a minute, once this medicine kicks in, we're going to uncuff him, put him on the bed, and then we're going to restrain him, soft point him to the bed.
You guys have any extra gloves on you?
My back pouch over here.
Okay.
They're extra large, just so everybody can fit them.
Just to feel you, this contact with the walk around the street, going like a wrestling match or something like that. Got all these guys that even down the road, no patients dying into it. Still fighting the league out here. Without it, probably excited to go in and probably get to 5 as well. Then we are going to we're going to give it maybe a minute, but looks like it's starting to get ready. We'll go ahead and talk is he in custody or?
Yeah.
I'm sure he will be.
I'm sure he will be, man.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Just like the hospital staff know.
He's not already.
All right. How's he? He seemed a little.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get him on this side, and we'll just uncuff him.
Let's get him on the gurney first.
Okay.
Okay.
Careful.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll put a new title on
Do the right one first.
Yeah, would you?
Want to grab this?
I got it.
You guys got them?
Good? Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Just move this over a little bit. First of all, thank you for being here this evening. I'm Nick Metz, Chief of Police with the Aurora Police Department. Before I get into the reason of why we're here to talk about the death of Elijah McClain, I recognize a few of you from last night when we were looking for Baby Miracle, and I just want to extend a big thank you. That was a very tense few hours for us. And we really didn't know how that was going to turn out, and the fact that you guys especially put information out for us when you did was huge, and we just appreciate the teamwork on that, so thank you. The other thing is, and Crystal touched on this just a little bit, we realize this is a late hour, and I know that this has created some questions and so forth about why are we doing this on a Friday night. One of the things that I directed early on was that when we got a decision letter from the 17th Judicial District, that we were going to get information out as quickly as possible. Obviously, there were 3 possibilities of that decision letter. There could likely be a decision by the DA to do a grand jury. There could be a decision by the DA to do an indictment, or in this case, a decision by the DA to issue a declination letter, which is what they did in this case. I told my staff that it didn't matter what day this letter came out, that we were going to be doing this press conference as quickly as possible, even if it was late on a Friday night, a Saturday, or Sunday, because I didn't want to hold this declination letter for several days and create concern in the community that I was holding on to information intentionally. So we did receive this letter today from District Attorney Dave Young from the 17th Judicial District at 3:35 this afternoon. I think it's really important to first say that on behalf of the women and the men of the Aurora Police Department, that we first want to extend our sincerest condolences to Elijah McClain's family. And we certainly recognize and understand that this has been an incredibly devastating and difficult process for them over these last several weeks. When this incident happened, I was immediately notified by Commander Dudley of our Investigations Bureau. Commander Dudley immediately ensured that Elijah's family was notified and also ensured that Elijah's family was connected to our victim advocate so that we could make sure that Elijah's family got the support they needed as Elijah was fighting for his life in the hospital. We did this because obviously we think it's the right thing to do. Elijah obviously was very loved by his family. I actually had the opportunity to meet with his family at the hospital. I spent a couple hours with his mother along with Commander Dudley and our victim advocate, Carol O'Shea. And during that meeting, I promised Elijah's mother that there would be a very transparent and thorough investigation into this incident. And one of the things I also promised Elijah's mother was that within several days after much of the investigation was completed, that we would allow her and family to come in and personally view the body cam footage, much of what you just saw here, and also hear the 911 tape. And I felt that was important because, again, this was Elijah's family. This is something that we have done in the past with other critical incidents. We feel it's important that family members are able to have the opportunity to see that information well before the general public. Several days later, in keeping with that promise, Elijah's family did come in and they were able to view the body-worn camera footage and hear the 911 call. At the beginning, and I apologize, I'm going to back up here just a little bit. When I was informed about this particular incident, the night of the incident itself, recognizing that Elijah was in a life-threatening situation, I directed my investigators to handle this case as if it were an officer-involved shooting. Some of you may be aware that there is a House bill that requires police departments to team up with other agencies as well as district attorneys' offices to jointly conduct investigations on those cases that involve an officer-involved shooting, and then the bill is specific to an officer-involved shooting. In this case, I believed it was important to, even though it didn't involve a shooting, to handle the case much the same way, and therefore we requested the assistance of the Denver Police Department as well as the 17th Judicial District Attorney's Office in handling that investigation. There was a lot of criticism, obviously, in the community and in the media that we didn't release the body-worn camera footage or other information that had already been released early on. It was my decision to do that in the realm of protecting the integrity of this investigation and the credibility of this investigation, and that was also requested of me by the 17th Judicial District Attorney's Office to not do that. And I felt that that was the right thing to do given that request. As promised, now that the District Attorney's Office and the Adams County Coroner's Office have made their final determination on this case, we are prepared to release much of the anticipated information. As I go through this, obviously you've seen the video, and I'm sure it's raising a lot of questions and concerns that you may have, but I want you to know that as we go through this, in no way do we want to do anything to vilify Elijah. We recognize that Elijah was in a distressed state, and we also recognize that this was a situation that obviously resulted in tragedy with his death. On August 24th at 10:32 p.m., a very warm summer night, officers responded to a 911 call from a concerned citizen, and you saw that and heard that. And the citizen reported that they saw a man wearing a black ski mask and was waving his arms around. Officers located and contacted the man matching the description, who we now know to be Elijah. Mr. McClain refused to stop as requested by the officers, and as you saw, a pretty violent struggle ensued. Officers, when they contacted him on the sidewalk, intentionally moved him to the grassy area in hopes of getting him to comply and also getting him restrained. You can hear at one point during the video an officer saying he's going for your gun, or he just grabbed your gun. As stated in the declination letter from the district attorney's office, Elijah grabbed the grip of an officer's holstered gun. This struggle ensued to the ground, where 3 body-worn cameras did become dislodged, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. And as you could see from the video, one officer was able to actually pick up that body-worn camera and put it back to continue the videotaping. As the declination later also stated, quote, based on the circumstances present here, the officers had reasonable basis to not only stop and question Mr. McClain, but also to pat him down for weapons to ensure safe contact with him. During that struggle, as officers were trying to gain compliance, one of the officers unsuccessfully attempted to apply a carotid control hold. And as stated in the declination letter, another officer was in a better position and did effectively place Elijah into a carotid control hold. Now, one of the things that happens when we use that term is people like to say, they used to like to call it a chokehold. A chokehold and a carotid restraint hold are 2 different things. In your media packet that we provided you prior to the press conference starting, you have examples of the difference between a carotid control hold and a choke. And a carotid control hold applies no significant pressure to the front of the neck. It applies pressure to the sides of the neck. And that's the biggest difference between a carotid control hold and a choke. Once the handcuffs were applied on Elijah, the officers immediately requested medical attention. And they did that for 2 reasons for Elijah. One is because it is our department policy that when we either apply a carotid control hold or attempt to apply a carotid control hold, it requires immediate observation and examination by medical personnel. And also because of Elijah's actions and behavior. And so therefore, in calling for medical assistance, the Aurora Fire Rescue Department was requested to respond. Responding medical personnel treated Elijah in accordance to protocols. Our Deputy Chief, Steve McInerney, will discuss those protocols here in greater detail in a moment. But as the declination states, APD did not, and I want to repeat that again, did not request the administration of any medication. APD did not administer any medication, nor does APD have the authority to do so. Mr. McClain was transported to the hospital via Falk ambulance. He was placed on a gurney, as you saw on the video. While en route to the hospital in a Falk ambulance, he suffered 2 cardiac arrests and was taken to the ER, where they continued to work on him. They did then transport him up to intensive care, where he remained for several days. He was pronounced dead on August 30th, 2019. Following, as we continued with the investigation, the 3 officers that were involved were placed on administrative leave, and that is our policy. Each officer then goes through a reintegration program. This is designed to promote healthy return to duty. All the involved officers have since returned to duty. And you'll have those descriptions of that reintegration processes in your media packets. One of the things I do want to discuss just real quickly was a comment that you may have heard in the video, and that was a comment from one of our K-9 officers. That comment that was made was inappropriate. It was unprofessional, and that comment has been addressed with that officer through a written corrective action. I do want to say, however, that the officer is a very good officer. He made a mistake, and that mistake has been addressed, and actually will continue to be addressed as the entire K-9 unit will receive additional training and expectations on appropriate use and appropriate behavior at a scene. Regardless of that, I do want to provide an apology to the family, because when they saw that and heard that, it was something that obviously disturbed them greatly. And for that, again, I do very much and sincerely apologize. So where do we go from here? It's not over. We don't, just because we have the letter doesn't mean that we stop and say, okay, we're done, and we just go on about our business. There's a lot of work that still needs to happen following this incident. Now that the declination letter has been issued, there's a few things that are going to happen. One is, I have ordered that a force review board be convened that will review the actions and the force of those officers to determine if the force used was within department policy. If there are any violations that are noted by the Force Review Board, which is comprised of high-ranking department members as well as members from training and so forth, if they find any issues that they believe violated policy, those allegations will be forwarded to our internal affairs for investigation. I'm also ordering a tactical review board, and I've asked that tactical review board be comprised of force experts who are outside of the Aurora Police Department. We plan to reach out to force experts from around the area and from throughout the country to come in and to review this situation in its entirety. We want to do this to determine if there is a need to change policies, if there's a need to change procedures, if there's a need to change tactics, and if there's a need for different types of training. We have a very robust department policy and training policy. We don't rest on our laurels when it comes to that. We are constantly reviewing our policies and looking at best practices, and this is going to create that opportunity to do so. The other issue that has come up is, and I know this has come up by several of you, is the concern about the body cameras falling off. First of all, let me say this. I take issue with some folks in the community and then even in the media who have asserted that these officers intentionally removed their body-worn cameras. I've been in this job for 36 years, and I myself have been in my share of violent altercations and trying to arrest someone who doesn't want to be arrested. And I can tell you that during those struggles, my badge, my name tags, my handcuffs, my radio have all come off. I remember a situation in which when a fellow officer, while I was still in Seattle, we were in a struggle, his gun came out. There is not a perfect system out there, but we are looking for it. And so what we are doing is we are working with a number of vendors to look at different kinds of mounting options for our body-worn cameras to make sure that we do everything possible to prevent them from falling off. Because I can assure you, our officers don't want them falling off. Our officers want the truth to come out. They want people to see what happened. And the last thing they want is to be put under a cloud of suspicion that they just simply picked their camera up and threw it to the ground. I was in Chicago a few weeks ago at the International Association of Chiefs Police Conference, where there was a large vendor show. Lots of vendors there with obviously wanting for us to look at their body-worn camera systems. We are currently in the process of looking at new body-worn camera systems in the next year, and part of that will be to really look at the mounting systems that are out there. The issues that you saw here have happened in other cities where body cameras have come off. And it was a discussion and a topic of discussion for many of my colleagues from major cities around the country. The other thing that's not done is how do we work with the community from here? And I am incredibly proud of this department's outreach and its engagement with the community. Aurora is one of the most diverse cities in this country. We have over 150 different languages, so I'm told. And my officers engage with these communities with incredible professionalism and compassion. And many, many times a year, our officers are invited to community events to participate in different types of events with the folks from the community. And they don't ask our officers to be there as security. They ask our officers to be there to build those partnerships and relationships. But we also understand that when it comes to community engagement and when it comes to those relationships, we have to work at it every day. As I tell my command staff members, you audition every day for this job. Well, we audition every single day for the respect of our community. And so that we know that there are lots of questions as it pertains to the death of Elijah. And we are prepared to work with our community. We will be working with our key community response team. We will be working with the Aurora Police Department's Community Policing Advisory Team. And we will be working with any community member or members who want to sit down with us to discuss issues and concerns about police-community relations. We recognize that the onus is on us to build those relationships and to keep those relationships healthy, and we are prepared to do what we need to do to make that happen. Before I answer any questions, I want to turn it over to Aurora Fire Rescue's Deputy Chief Steve McInerney, who wants to discuss with you just a little bit about AFR's response to this incident. Chief?
Good evening, Steve McInerney. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations. Just wanted to cover just a few points. First, I'd like to echo the sentiments of Chief Metz in that our department offer the deepest sympathies and condolences to Mr. McClain's family and the community at large. We know that a lot of people have been affected by this incident. As you saw in the video, our personnel responded on the request of PD, and we assessed the patient, Mr. McClain, and we administered ketamine, which is based upon our department's protocol, and actually it's a regional protocol. There's 90+ agencies in Colorado that would follow a protocol of issuing ketamine based on what was being presented. The Aurora Fire Rescue Medical Direction Team, which is led by a physician, reviewed the treatment provided and found that the actions of our members were consistent with the department protocol and policy. Based on multiple reviews, Aurora Fire has concluded that the patient care provided to Mr. McClain was appropriate given the circumstances of this emergency scene. Again, as Chief Metz pointed out, we assess the patient, we treat everyone the same regardless of the situation. We don't take orders from PD to administer any drugs. It was based on what was presented. And ketamine is a medicine, a drug that would be issued in what was being presented to our medics and EMTs that were on the scene. The Aurora Fire Rescue Medical Director and team of physicians from local area hospitals will continue to review critical medical incidents. We always try to learn and do better. Additionally, the medical direction team will continue to meet to ensure adherence to department protocols and policy. Aurora Fire Rescue remains committed to providing the highest level of emergency service to the community members of Aurora. Our commitment also extends to our members who consistently provide professional service under difficult circumstances each and every day in the city. We continue to offer our condolences to all of those impacted by this tragic incident. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. This is where we'll open it up for questions. I would ask, given I'm sure that there are a lot of questions that you may have, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand, and we'll select you to ask your questions in an orderly fashion. So. Yes, ma'am.
Given that you asked for a force review board, can you just give your assessment of how you felt the officers handled that situation? Do you think that was an acceptable way to handle a call about a person who probably didn't have a weapon, according to the caller? And I'm just curious what your assessment was of the situation as the chief.
I don't believe the caller said he didn't have a weapon. The caller said he didn't know whether he had a weapon.
Well, he said no danger. So I just, when asked if there were weapons mentioned or involved, he said no. And then asked if he was in danger, he said no. So I'm just curious, from your perspective.
Well, let's put correct context to it. He was asked whether or not he was in danger. He said he was not, but he was not aware. Obviously, the actions of Elijah created some concern enough for him to call 911. It was a warm night. Elijah was wearing a ski mask. As was stated in the declination letter, our officers had reasonable suspicion to make that stop. And prior to our officers getting there, we don't know why Elijah was acting the way he was. We don't know why he was wearing a mask.
So regardless of that, what is your assessment? How do you feel the officers handled this? Do you think this was the best handling of the situation as the chief? How do you assess this? Was this a good job? Do you give this a thumbs up?
I think overall the officers did a good job. I think the officers overall, you heard the conversations with them. I think overall the officers were trying to calm Elijah down. I think in every single situation you can look at it and you can come up with things that we could potentially have done different or better. But again, I think this is where I'm going to be leaning greatly on my force review board to really go in and dissect everything about that investigation and come back to me with a recommendation.
Chief, one of the officers mentioned several times that he said the words, "whatever he's on," indicating that officer believed he was on something. The coroner's report shows that there was ketamine and marijuana in his system.
Correct.
What is the protocol for officers when they're considering the state that a person's in? I guess the question is, was there ever a consideration that maybe there was a mental health issue at stake here as opposed to this person being on some sort of a stimulant, let's say?
I think in just about every situation you deal with, and particularly if somebody is on some kind of substance, it creates a mental health issue. Our officers go through a lot of training in how to recognize those things. They go through a lot of training in how to deal with it. But every situation is different. Every situation brings with it different nuances, depending on the actions of the person that they're dealing with. Our officers were not in a position, obviously, to do drug testing or anything like that. They're trying to get as much information as they can at that moment to provide to not only AFR, but also to the hospital about what he may be on, or what may be impacting, or what may be causing him to, react in the way that he's reacting.
When we talk about a carotid hold, one of the officers says that he believes that that Elijah nodded off for a short time. I don't remember the exact word. When does an officer pull off? What's the protocol for reducing blood flow to the brain?
Once that person stops resisting.
So presumably that means when that person has passed out.
Correct. Okay. Yep.
During the entirety of the video, does any officer ask Elijah, "What's your name? Where do you live?" Is that a shortcoming in this? It seems like there was a lot of directive, but there wasn't a lot of communication with him. And then just a follow-up.
And I think, again, I go back to, that is exactly why we are requesting the Force Review Board and the Tactical Review Board. We want to drill down on those things. We want to be able to actually have further conversations with the officers about what was going on. We want to be able to use, a lot of those things as learning lessons for potential incidents in the future. We deal with thousands and thousands of calls and incidents a year. And unfortunately, more and more these days, we are seeing folks who are suffering from mental illness, substance issues, and a combination of both. I guess I look at it from the standpoint of we are constantly trying to make sure that we are learning as best we can, looking at best practices, examining what's happening around the country, looking at what other agencies are doing, and bring that here. Part of bringing that here was the creation of our community, our crisis response team. Those kinds of things are why we have adopted those kinds of initiatives in hopes of reducing and hopefully eliminating the need to use force on folks who are going through those kinds of things.
And just a quick follow-up. You've apologized to the family on behalf of the department and perhaps even on behalf of the K-9 officer. Has the K-9 officer apologized as well, either in writing or face-to-face with the family?
Not as of yet.
I had another question about, I tried to ask this at the last press conference because you weren't able to put the footage out yet, nobody could answer it. How well, I guess, if you could just describe what the de-escalation techniques are supposed to be. It appeared as if pretty quickly the officer touched Elijah's arm. And I just wondered, is that a normal protocol when trying to de-escalate the situation, or what should officers do to try and de-escalate the situation so it doesn't get to a heated level?
And again, I go back to every case is going to be very different. You can't take a cookie cutter approach to every call that we respond to. If I tell officers, you will not touch somebody in the first 5 seconds on any incident where someone is acting irrational, that officer then may be put in a position where now they're dealing with someone who's pulled out a knife or a gun. Our officers are given a great deal of training. They're given the training to assess the situation at the time and to make the best decision as they can based on the circumstances that are presented to them. Yes?
This might be a question more geared towards the fire department, but how common is it to administer ketamine to somebody in this situation? Is this something that happens quite often, or is this an infrequent protocol, or how does that work?
You're right. That's a question for the fire department.
Okay.
The administration of the ketamine is a calming sedative, and I believe, and stats that were recently released, is that there was 285 times, I think that's throughout Colorado, using 90 agencies on administration of that drug. It's relatively new with the city of Aurora Fire Rescue, but it's certainly a drug in our cache to calm a patient, to prevent injury to the patient, first and foremost, and to the first responders and/or law enforcement. It's better to give the drug to calm the patient down than have the patient harm themselves or create further injury. And the patient was exhibiting signs of excited delirium. We have a protocol. It's in your packet. You can see that protocol. It's spelled out. And that drug was administered per protocol. You should also take a look at the coroner's report and/or the declination letter. It's outlined the ketamine use in those documents.
Can you just expand a little bit further on the excited delirium? What specifically was he exhibiting or doing that made your first responders believe that he was experiencing excited delirium? I did hear one of the responders say, when the ambulance gets here in a few minutes, we'll give him this drug. That's a few minutes down the line. So I'm just curious, what specifically was he showing that represented excited delirium?
We continued to fight and wrestle with the officers. As you heard in the video, there was 3 officers that were pushed off of his back. He had his hand above his head and was able to push the officer around, breathing very fast, diaphoretic. So he met the signs and symptoms of excited delirium. And again, it's published in the coroner's report in the declination letter that they concur with the excited delirium. We followed a protocol. It's a standard protocol. We didn't deviate from that, and our paramedics administered the dose.
It was a 500 milligram dose. Can you describe is it always a 500 milligram dose, and how big of a dose is that compared to what you might get in a hospital or at a doctor's office?
Yeah, I'm not able to answer that part of it, but it's dependent on weight, and again, we follow a strict guideline and protocol that spells that all out. And then they measure out the dose based on the approximate weight of the patient, and the drug is administered. Basically, sets into motion 1 to 3 minutes. The patient calmed down. They put the patient on the stretcher, the cot, the pram, and then handcuffed the patient and soft-tied the patient.
I don't recall from the video, but did fire rescue ever ask the police department if Elijah had been put in a carotid hold? Was fire rescue aware that he had been put in a carotid hold at some point that night?
I'm not sure.
And could ketamine have an effect in combination with the two, a carotid hold and ketamine?
I don't believe so.
I have another question for the chief. Regarding the body camera footage. First of all, I guess a couple quick questions. One is do we see all of the footage, or is that an edited, what we saw edited?
There's more footage available, and you can get that through PIOs.
Okay. So the first camera comes off very quickly. And I wondered if you could explain what happened, or if you know, if that officer explained what happened. And then there was a period in there where one of the guys says, "Move your camera, dude." What did that officer mean by that? Did you interview him or ask him what he was meaning by "move your camera, dude"?
I don't know if I recall the "move your camera, dude," so I'm going to have to go back to that one to look at that. In regards to why the camera came off within a few seconds, I think I've explained that. Again, we're looking at the camera mounts. It was obvious at that point that the officers had gotten involved in a struggle with Elijah, and the camera came off. How can I explain that happened other than we need better mounting equipment for our cameras, and again, we are diligently exploring that.
Was it not 2 cameras that fell off?
Actually, all 3 did come off, and one actually was broke because it was stepped on.
I have one more question, sorry.
He had his hand up.
What do you plan to say to community members who believe your officers may have overreacted?
The only thing I can tell them is that, number one, I have confidence in my officers. I believe that my officers entered that situation with the best of intentions in trying to figure out what was going on, to determine whether or not they were dealing with a violent crime that had been in progress, or whether or not they were dealing with somebody who was experiencing some kind of distress. We're not mind readers. We had a duty to respond that night to that call. Our officers did so. They put themselves at risk, as our officers do in many situations every day. And if there are concerns to the community about regaining that trust, then we'll have those conversations. We listen to our community, and our community has had a great deal of input in how we do training. They've had a great deal of input in how we do community engagement. They've been part of that. As I said before, we have a community police and advisory team, which we meet with on a monthly basis, who advises me and the department on different issues. These are going to be obviously important topics to discuss as we continue to move forward. As I said before, I have great confidence in these officers. If I didn't have that kind of confidence in these officers, I would not have returned them to the street. Yes.
I just want to say I hope you allow questions at a later date, because we've only been able to watch this once, and I know it's getting late, but I did want to ask, I had some trouble hearing when the officer was shouting, "He's going for your gun." I heard the aftermath, and the guy said, he said he was going for my gun. I didn't hear him shouting originally. Can you, was that on that audio?
I'm going to ask you to work with the PIOs, and they can provide you where that was heard, if you didn't hear it.
You did hear that when
I did.
You heard someone shouting, "They're going for your gun."
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You said this is going to go to a tactical review board?
Correct.
With outside
force experts? Are they going to be police officers or consultants?
You know, we're going to figure that out as we go. There are a number of folks out there who are currently police officers, folks out there who are retired officers who have over their careers specialized in force. We'll take a really hard look at that, but we definitely want it to be a robust review. And it's an opportunity for us to learn. It's an opportunity for us, again, to examine our policies and procedures.
Is that going to be a new standing?
I've done it before. I've done it before.
What have the outcomes been of previous review boards like that? Has there been substantive reaction to a review board? Have you made changes based on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't go into all the specifics right now, and I don't have the reports all in front of me, but yes, we do. I mean, it's as I said before, you know, we handle thousands of incidents every year. Most incidents that we handle, we're able to resolve them without any issues. They usually last a few minutes, and people go their separate ways, and the officer goes their separate way. But when those situations occur where there has been a critical incident, we certainly want to make sure that we learn from that, and we examine ourselves. We've got to be able to ask ourselves the tough questions. Did we do this right? If the officer simply reacting to policy, okay, is our policy correct? You know, so those are the things that we have to really examine. Yes.
There's been some disruptions at recent council meetings, specifically regarding this case, and I know Chief Wilson went to the community forum recently where this again came up. Do you or does anyone else in the firm plan on addressing the community in a larger forum in the future?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there'll be a community meeting this coming Tuesday, the Tuesday evening that has been coordinated by Councilmember Nicole Johnston. We intend to be there and participate in those discussions and answer the questions that we can answer.
Last question.
6:30, restoration.
I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, folks. Appreciate your time. And again, thank you for coming at this late hour.